In the previous video, we talked about maximum cardinality, and we talked about this notations for denoting the cardinality. Now, in this video, we want to cover the other part, which is the minimum cardinality notations. We have 0 or what looks like an O for optional, and then we have the bar or what looks like a 1 for mandatory. So we will see how we can use this in conjunction with maximum cardinality. So we have these four notations, and each one of these four notations will mean something based on minimum and maximum cardinality. So for the first one, it is what we call a mandatory one. And the way we read it is the first one is for the minimum cardinality. So this is for the minimum cardinality, and the second one is for the maximum cardinality. So minimum is 1, maximum is 1, so this is a mandatory 1. And then we have minimum is 0, maximum is 1. This is what we call an optional 1. So a mandatory 1 means it is a 1 and it has to be a 1. So when we have an instance in the relationship, this instance must be a 1. And this says it can be 0 or 1, no other option. And then we have mandatory many. That means minimum is 1, maximum is many. So this is from 1 to, let's say, any number here. So from 1 to many. So minimum is 1. It has to be at least 1 or any other number, 2 or 3 or 4 or any other number. And finally, we have optional many, which is 0 here and many here. So this will be from 0 to many instances of the relationship. Now let's look at some examples, and these examples will help clarify things. For the first example, we have this set of business rules. It says each presenter must be assigned one presentation slot, and we have a must here. And then each presentation slot must belong to only one presenter. So we have a mandatory here and we have a 1 here on both sides. So if we want to analyze it like we did before, what we can do is, for example, I will say, okay, this is presenter and this is going to be slot. So this is what I will have. So what I have from presenter to slot, I have a must here and 1 here. So it is the minimum is 1 because I say it must have something, and the maximum is 1. So this is going to be my notation. Similarly, from slot to presenter, my minimum is 1 because we say must belong to only 1. So my minimum is 1, my maximum is 1, and I will have this notation. So I will have this ERT here, and I will say is assigned or anything on top. So I will need to have some kind of label in here to tell me what the relationship is. Okay, let's look at another example. So when I say each employee can be assigned one parking spot, and each parking spot can belong to one employee and can be unassigned. So when I say it can be assigned, and then I say the employee can be assigned only one parking spot, and each spot can belong to only one employee and can be unassigned. So this means I have an optional case here, okay, and I have the same here. This is optional, and then this is my maximum here is 1 and my maximum here is 1. So again, if I'm looking from employee to parking, my minimum is 0 and my maximum is 1. If I'm looking from parking to employee, my minimum is 0, my maximum is 1. So I will have this sort of relationship in here, and then again I'll have this sort of relationship in here. So I'll have this on both ends, and this is going to be my ERD. Let's look at some more examples. So what about mandatory many? Let's look at this one. Each patient must have at least one medical record. So if I say at least one, that means mandatory one, which is my minimum. But each medical record belongs to only one patient. So okay, let's analyze this. So I'll have P for patient, and then I will have medical record, which is the patient history. Let me call it M. So from P to M, what is my minimum? So each patient must have at least one. So my minimum is one. What is my maximum? Since I just said at least, that means one or two or three or any number. So my maximum is many in this case. Okay, so from medical record to patient, what is my minimum? It says each medical record belongs to only one patient. So if I have a medical record, it must belong to only one patient. So it is minimum one, maximum one. So in this case, if I'm going from patient to medical record, I will have this notation. And if I'm going from medical record or patient history to patient, I will have this notation. And this is going to be my final ERD. Now what I have on the side right here is just to show some examples that, for example, this patient has only one record, this patient has two records, and this patient has one record, but none of these records are associated with more than one patient, so this cannot happen. Let's look at another case, optional many. When I say a movie can have 0 or multiple DVD copies, but each DVD copy must belong to only one movie. Let's analyze it and see what do we have. So when I say a movie can have 0 or multiple DVD copies, so from movie to DVD, what is my minimum? It says 0 or multiple, so my minimum is 0 and my maximum is going to be many. And then from DVD to movie, what is my minimum? It says but each DVD copy must belong to only one movie. So I have mandatory 1. So if I'm going from DVD to movie, my minimum is 1, my maximum is 1. So this is going to be my notation. If I'm going from movie to DVD, and if I'm going from DVD to movie, this is going to be my notation. And this is going to be my final ERD. Now for the double line here, don't care about it. It is just, I don't know why the book had it like this, but a single line would do right here. Let's look at some more examples. When I say an employee can be assigned 0 or more projects, and then each project must have at least one employee. So let's analyze this and see what sort of ERD we are going to get. So again, I will say I have employee and I have project. So one direction is from employee to project, the other direction is from project to employee. So if I'm going from employee to project, an employee can be assigned to 0 or more projects. So my minimum is going to be 0 here and my maximum is going to be many. Again, if I'm going from project to employee, it says each project must have at least one employee. So I have mandatory, and then since I have at least, so it's mandatory many. My minimum is going to be 1, my maximum is going to be many. So if I'm going from employee to project, this is going to be my notation. And if I'm going from project to employee, this is going to be my notation. And this is the ERD that I have. And again, we have some examples here that show the relationship instances that some employees are assigned to more than one project, and some projects have more than one employee, and we have some employees who are not assigned to any project, because we said an employee can be assigned to 0 or more projects. So if we look at the bottom here, we have Heidi not assigned to any project, but we do not have any project that is not assigned to any employee. One more example would be a person can be married to at most one other person or can be not married. So in this case, how many entities do I have? So if I look at it, it's only a person that can be married to other person. So I only have person entity. But how will I map this thing? First of all, let's think of it as two entities. So from person to person, a person can be married to at most one other person. So my minimum is 0, my maximum is 1. Okay, so if I'm going the other direction, it's also from person to person, and my minimum is 0, my maximum is 1. And then this is going to be my notation. Now, how will I draw this? Will I have it like this? Person, and then another person, and then I will have it like this, and I will say married. Is that correct? Now the problem with this is when we talked about ERD, we said we cannot have two entities with the same name, and if I have it like this is going to be two entities with the same name. Okay, what if I say person 1 and person 2? This may work, but then if I'm inserting data for some person, where will it go? Is it going to go in here, or is it going to go in here? This is going to be a problem. So this is a case where we have what we call a unary relationship. We will talk about these in more details, but we will have only one entity type, which is person, and then we will have the relationship line going from the entity to itself. And these are again some examples: a person that's married, a person that's married, a person that's not married, another person that's not married, but we do not have any other any person that's married to more than one other person. So when I say extract the business rules, now we are talking the opposite way. If I have this ERD and I want to extract the business rules out of the ERD, now if we look closely, we have two entities. One of them is called staff and the other one is called branch, and then the relationship type is manages. So again, every time you are reading, you read the notation that is further away from the entity type you're starting with. So I'm starting with staff, so I'll read this. I will not read this when I'm going left to right. And if I'm going right to left, I will read this. I will not read this part when I'm going this way. So I will say, okay, each staff member manages 0 or more branches. And then each branch is managed by only one staff member, or must be managed by only one staff member. As long as your sentence tells me that this is a mandatory, then that's going to be fine. Okay. Now let's look at one last example, extracting the business rules out of the following ERD. I have course and I have exam. So when I try to analyze this, again, if I'm reading this way, I will read this part, and if I'm reading this way, I will read this part. So a course can have 0 or more exams. Why do I say can? Because this is optional. So this translates to can. So a course can have 0 or more exam. Is it at least one? No. It can be 0, so it's not at least one. But then an exam has to belong to only one course, or must belong to only one course. And this is going to be my business rules. Now, a common question that we get, if I have if I have the minimum and maximum, then I know this is minimum, this is maximum, this is minimum, this is maximum. What about if I have only one of them? So what if mine looks something like this? Now, what will this tell me? Is it the minimum or the maximum? The general rule is when you have only one cardinality constraint, it is always the maximum cardinality. So you can have a bar like this saying this is the maximum. You can have the crowfoot, this is the maximum, but you cannot have something like this without another notation to tell you what is the maximum. So the rule of thumb is if you have only one cardinality, it is always going to be the maximum cardinality.